Well, hello again, and welcome to episode 22 of the Power Learning Podcast from EnglishAnyone.com. I'm Drew Badger, the co-founder of EnglishAnyone.com, and it is a pleasure, as always, to be joining you today, wherever in the world you are. Right now, I'm in my usual little spot here in my home doing this recording, and it's let's see, what day is it? Maybe the 10th or 11th of September, I forget which, but anyway, it's a lovely day, and right now it's actually beautiful weather here in Japan. Japan is kind of weird about seasons. It's got 4 seasons just like America does, but it can be incredibly humid. So if you want to come to Japan, if you're not living here already, I highly recommend about 2 weeks in spring or 2 weeks in fall when it's really nice. Other than that, it's either really hot or really cold, and it's always pretty humid. So anyway, I'm in that nice, really very temperate, kind of a nice natural climate here for fall, and it's my favorite season here in Japan, so I'm really excited about that. It's really great to get outside, and lots of great foliage. This is another kind of more advanced word for talking about the leaves of trees. So the foliage is changing colors right now. Or it will be starting to do that soon, a little bit closer to the southern part of Japan where I am. Anyway, we'll be leaving our talk about Japan, and we'll get into the meat, the heart of what I'd like to be talking about today, and that is pronunciation and how you can improve your pronunciation by yourself. I get a lot of questions from students about how to improve pronunciation, and the reason I'm talking about this today is because when I was out in Vietnam, I really got to have some great talks with a lot of learners and especially fans of English Anyone videos and lessons in a coffee shop. So we did that actually twice when I was there, and so now I hope to do that as a regular thing when I'm doing my couch surfing world tour and traveling to different countries. So when I do that, usually I stay with one person or maybe a group of people and specifically help them. But because I can't help everyone, it's really nice if I can find time while I'm traveling in different countries to actually meet people that are living there that really want to improve their English. So we had 2 opportunities to meet different people out in Vietnam in Ho Chi Minh City, and there were really a lot of great things that we talked about, but one of them was pronunciation. So this is a very common thing that people like to talk about, and it's an important thing for a lot of people. I know some people actually want to sound like a native speaker. Other people just want to be able to express themselves clearly. Whatever the case is for you, will help you get there with this episode of the Power Learning Podcast. So while I was in a conversation there and talking about different things, one thing came up because I was also trying to mimic or copy some of the sounds that the Vietnamese speakers would make. So I did a lot of that. People would be trying to teach me a word, and I would be able to copy that sound pretty well. And people were saying, well, maybe you have an advantage because you're able to mimic sounds, and that makes it easier for you to learn languages. Now, this is something I really stopped the conversation, really wanted to discuss when we were talking about it when it came up in the conversation at the coffee shop. And I want to talk to everybody, talk to you about that right now. And anytime you see someone with a particular talent or a particular ability, that's usually just a skill that they developed over time. And usually they developed it really because they enjoy doing that thing. So in my case, I really just like trying to mimic sounds. Now, my voice is not in a particularly good state right now. Maybe I'm like allergic to something in my house or something, I don't know. But anyway, so I won't try to do too many demonstrations of, different voices and things like that. But I really like trying to mimic sounds. Now, what I'm doing when I do that is I'm listening to a sound first, and then I'm making that sound in my head. Because it's always easier to manipulate a sound or to manipulate the way your body moves by visualizing that in your head first. And usually I'll try to also visualize the other person making that sound. So when I teach sound transitioning, this is a technique I teach in Master English Conversation. This is where you listen to something first and then you visualize the other person making that sound in your head. It could be like an actor or just a friend of yours, something like that. And then you try to manipulate them making that sound. So let's say maybe you're not good at making a really deep voice like the actor James Earl Jones, who did the voice of Darth Vader in Star Wars, and he was like, "Luke, I am your father." And again, like, my voice is just not in a very good state right now. But anyway, even if you can't physically make that sound, you can't go that low with your voice, you can imagine him making that sound in your head. So do a lot of visualization practice in order to not only get a sense of what the good motions are. If you have to move your body in a certain way, or your lips, or anything like that, you have to see it in your mind first, and then after that you can start actually practicing that in the real world by basically speaking. So basically making individual sounds and then actually starting making words and longer sentences and things like that. So when this came up in the conversation, talking about my being able to mimic different sounds and actually being able to sound a little bit like a Japanese, or I guess a Vietnamese speaker in that case, when I was in Vietnam, the interesting thing is that I don't have a particular talent for mimicking things. I just enjoy doing it, and so I do it a lot, and then I've become kind of good at it that way. So there's nothing natural, or another great English word is inborn, I-N-B-O-R-N, inborn. Means you have it naturally, and it's something that you're basically born with. So it's an innate talent, I-N-N-A-T-E, innate. It's just something that you have naturally. So I don't really believe in that. Most of the time, usually the things that you start doing and they come easy to you, the things that are easy to do, those are the things you end up liking, and then that's what you start doing more of, and that's what you get good at. And if you don't like something from the very beginning, then you probably don't want to continue doing that thing. And then because you don't do it, you don't get very good at it. So whether you believe in the nature versus nurture argument, this is a very common thing that people talk about in different disciplines or different industries. Whether or not your natural ability comes from the way you were when you were born, or it's something you can develop, or what's the stronger influencer? Is it how you were born or how you're raised? That kind of thing. But for me, I happen to believe that how you're raised, or the environment that you're in, has a much bigger impact on the kind of person you become, or the skills that you develop. And because of that, depending on how you think, you can change the way you behave and the way you do things and the way you learn. So that's why even if you've learned languages the wrong way, as I like to call it, or just in an ineffective way, you can change the way you learn or change the way you do things to start seeing success. And I know this is true because I know I kind of did business the wrong way before, and now I'm doing it the correct way and actually seeing a lot more success. So again, it depends on the environment you're in and the way you change your voice and all that. So don't believe it when you hear people saying, well, he has a natural talent for languages, or she's really good at mimicking sounds, or something like that. Because if you're listening to this right now, you can already understand quite a bit of English, and you already speak a second language, which is actually your first language. So that's the natural language that you learn from birth. So you're able to speak that and English, which is really great. And if you can learn one language, you can definitely learn others. It just depends on how you learn them. So getting back to pronunciation, what I want to talk about in this podcast episode is something I discussed in a recent Power Learning newsletter. This is my free newsletter that you can get at EnglishAnyone.com. And it's got lots of tips, and I send regular messages and helpful advice about how to get fluent in English faster. But in a recent mail, I was talking about pronunciation, and because it's kind of a little bit tricky to just, write about pronunciation, I really wanted to make this podcast episode about pronunciation as well, so you can hear my voice and listen to my examples a little bit better. So in the podcast episode today, I'll talk about what I was basically doing from the Power Learning newsletter a little while ago, which is something I noticed in Vietnam, and I noticed this pretty much from all of the native speakers, or the other people that are trying to learn the language, people here in Japan or other people that I speak with from around the world. And basically what happens is people actually use a lot of the correct sounds that sound natural and native to a native English speaker, the same sounds from conversational English, but they're using them in the wrong way or at the wrong time. And what I mean by this is that they will use a correct sound, but in the wrong word. And so like a definition I like to give, or an example I like to give from Japanese, and this is the same example I used in the Power Learning newsletter that I sent out not that long ago, and this is the word hot in English. So just to make sure everybody can understand that, I want to go over that example again so everybody can hear that. Now, there will be lots of examples from many different languages, but I just don't know the Vietnamese language very well, so I'm going to talk about Japanese in this episode. So this example of hot is a word that's pretty common, and it's actually used in Japanese. But the Japanese way of saying that is hotto, hotto. And if you listen carefully, the reason I'm saying like ho, like an H-O sound, instead of the ha-ha sound that we would have in regular American English, and even listening to that, my nasal pronunciation, I'm speaking with my nose. It's a bit more of a Chicago accent. So maybe some other places it would say like hot, hot, but I say hot, hot, really using my nose when I speak. And again, there isn't one particular perfect way to pronounce something because there are lots of different native English, so just pick something you like if you're trying to go for a particular sound when you speak. Anyway, so this word hotto, it appears in Japanese a lot because a lot of Japanese people understand the word, and if you don't know much about Japanese, there are basically 3 different written character sets for expressing different words. The first one is called kanji, and this is the borrowed characters that come from China, and then those are taken and they actually are expressing a particular meaning. So like the word yomu has the kanji for like reading, and then another kanji which is hiragana, or another character which is hiragana. So this is the second character set. And this is for expressing Japanese words phonetically. So if I were to write like the word hot, the actual word for hot in Japanese is atsui. And so that would be 3 different characters of the hiragana, which don't mean anything by themselves except for the sounds. So it's just atsui. And if I were to write all those, it would just be 3 phonetic written characters instead of a kanji, again, which is the borrowed Chinese characters, which actually has a meaning when you look at it. So the last one is called katakana, and then this is for using or expressing foreign words phonetically in Japanese. So the word hot, coming from English, is written in katakana because that's what you take when you want to use a foreign word and write it directly. Now, what happens with a lot of words that are translated from English directly into katakana is that they will take the actual letter from English, we have H-O-T, and instead of using the actual sound from Japanese that's appropriate for that, which would be ha, they use ho. And so that's why we get that sound, and then people kind of mispronounce it that way. So they're not really mispronouncing the word, it's just more we've taken the word from English and then squeezed it, pushed it, forced it to fit into the Japanese sound. But the interesting thing, and this is what I mentioned in the Power Learning newsletter, is that people can actually make the word hot. They can make that sound exactly like I'm saying it. And when I talk to Japanese speakers, I talk with this example or about this example. And they're all able to pronounce it perfectly after I explain what I'm talking about, what I'm about to tell you now. So if we break down the sounds, instead of hotto, which is actually 3 characters. We've got ho, and then we've got a small, it's a little character called tsu, but it's a small character written small, so you don't actually pronounce it. And it just functions in a word as a little bit of a pause or a delay. So instead of hotto, where I'm saying it really quickly, there's a slight pause in what I'm saying. Hotto, hotto. Now, again, I'm not trying to teach you Japanese here, but I want you to see how you can take a sound from one language and it actually fits back into English. So what I'm going to do, instead of using ho, is take the Japanese ha, which actually does appear in Japanese. This is a regular Japanese sound, and you don't need to think about it. You don't need to work hard in order to try to figure out how to make that sound, because it happens naturally in Japanese. So if we replace the ho with ha, then we've got hatto, hatto, which gets a little bit closer to what hot would be in English. Now, the last character, and this is a thing that's particular to Japanese, other languages maybe have something similar or a little bit different, but most of the characters in Japanese have a kind of like the English alphabet, like A, B, C, the consonant sounds. We've got like even the letter B has a b sound and an E sound connected with it. So even just saying the letters, the names of the letters of the English alphabet, you get the consonant sound and the vowel sound together. And this is exactly what happens in most of the characters in Japanese. So the last part of hot is to, 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 like toe, like I've got my regular toe on my foot. So it's a little bit shorter than that, but basically we've got the t sound and the o sound as well. And if Japanese speakers can learn to recognize that there are actually two sounds in that single character, then they can break those apart and then use those in other words. So we begin with the Japanese hoto, and then move to hato, and then move to hot, hot, hot. Again, I'm just taking the sounds that people are already making in Japanese, but I'm pulling them out from other places where they're coming in different words, and then putting them back together again in the correct way in the word hot. Now, this is really interesting for people because they actually realize once I start talking about this that they really can make all of the sounds, or at least most of them, and then that will get them much more excited about, wow, I can really pronounce the language the same way a native speaker can, or at least much better than sounding like I come from a foreign country. So depending on what kind of pronunciation you'd like to have, it really is possible to sound like a native speaker, or just to really improve your pronunciation. It doesn't really matter. But using this principle of kind of dissecting the sounds that you already make in your own language, and then figuring out by listening to English which way you can take those sounds and kind of put them back together in an English word, and then you can move on to larger phrases and sentences and things like that, where you're really focusing on blending the sounds of your words together. Because for English pronunciation, there are basically two essential pieces. The first one is being able to make the individual sounds, and then the second one is being able to blend those sounds together when you speak. Because often, when we're speaking, just like right now, my sounds are blending together a little bit, but really this is my kind of teaching voice, and so I'm a bit more clear. I'm pronouncing things a bit more clearly for people. But just the same, if you want to be able to do that, again, these two things, mastering individual sounds and then learning how to blend sounds together. The sounds of individual words, like people will talk about that a lot, but that's not really something that I recommend you focus on, because the sounds of words change, again, when you get them into larger phrases and sentences, things like that. So again, practice on these two things, and we'll talk a little bit more in this episode about how we can do that right now. Okay, so let's talk about music and how you can improve your pronunciation by yourself. One of the complaints that I heard, especially in Vietnam while I was there, and also just, from people online or other people I meet here in Japan, is that they kind of feel that they don't know how to pronounce things because they need a native speaker to correct them. Like they don't have the ear to listen to native English, and then they're unable to work on their pronunciation because of that. Now, this is something that I really disagree with, and it's something I disagree with because in my personal experience of learning and working with a lot of students personally, I've kind of taught them how to overcome this by using the analogy of music. Now, by using music, we can take something that's pretty much universal to humans all over the planet. And this is just the different tones like ah, 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 ah. And again, I'm not a very good singer and my voice is not very good today. But if you listen to a tone like ooh, and I don't even know what note that is, but if you listen to that, you can know whether or not it's actually the same or slightly off. We call that, it's a great English way of describing something that's a little bit different or a little bit bad or not quite correct. This is to be off, just regular O-F-F, off. So when the sound is off a little bit, your ear recognizes that. Like if you're listening to your favorite song and you slow that song down a little bit, you can really notice the difference. So if you want to practice just training your ear to listen, to isolate sounds, to get sounds by themselves, to isolate them, and then also to develop the ability of hearing the different pitches and the way that sounds are different. You can take a song that you like, that you know really well, and then just play it a little bit slower in whatever music player you have. And that will help you listen that, the regular song, like maybe if you've done karaoke or karaoke, as we say in Japanese, I'll go to karaoke sometimes and you can actually mess with the pitch, or you can slow it down. So that's kind of a funny thing I do. I'm out with my friends, and while they're singing, in the middle of the song, I will change the pitch. And so they start trying to sing a little different version, like they're trying to sing Michael Jackson, and then I change the pitch on them, and then they don't really know what to do. But the point of that is that it's a universal thing that people can recognize individual sounds. And that's really all language is. It's just basically the same kind of tones. The only thing that's different is we're adding consonant sounds as well, like k, b, t, s, that kind of thing. So if you can practice making those sounds, but beginning with the tones themselves, then you can actually hear that a little bit more clearly. So what I'd like you to do in order to improve your pronunciation by yourself, and again, you can do this anytime, anywhere, you don't need a native speaker to tell you, because you can listen to native English and know the difference between someone that speaks the language well and someone that doesn't speak the language well. Just in the same way that you would hear a music note and know that one music note is correct and the other music note is not correct. So what I'd like you to do is to have some headphones. It's important that you use headphones for this because it really isolates the sound in your ears. It really keeps the sound in your ears. And start listening to some music. It's really easy to listen to music. And again, this is just to test yourself to see if you can make particular tones. And what you should do is try to actually make that same tone with the music. So as an example, I'm listening to a song and some tone in the song, one music note might be like, ooh, and now I have to try to make that same tone by listening. So I've got the same ooh sound coming in my ears, and then I've also got the ooh sound that I'm saying at the same time. So the more you can do this is really getting to isolate the sound. And so if you can have just one sound, you're listening to music like ooh, and then I am changing the tone of my voice, or you could call it the note, but I'm practicing with that and making sure I kind of vary it up and down to try to get the pitch or the tone or the note just right. So if the one tone I'm listening to is ooh, and then I make a like ooh, I can hear, okay, that's the correct tone, because I'm hearing the correct one, the tone I'm trying to match in my ears. And there's a natural harmony that occurs, it's kind of like a good feeling that you get when you're actually matching the tone, or if you harmonize with it. And when you harmonize with something, that's when you have like 2 or 3 notes that are playing together, which I can't do because that's impossible to do for one person, I guess, unless you're magical or something. But for myself, I can listen to a tone in a music, like a song, and then try to make one that complements that. So maybe the tone I'm listening to in the song is like, ooh, and the other tone I'm making is like, ooh, or something like that. Anyway, that's not a very good example, but the point is that when you experiment with just adjusting the tone that you make, like ooh, that kind of thing, if you adjust that, you can start to really know exactly when you're matching the pitch of that perfectly. So before you start trying to match words perfectly, just try to get pitch, and that will develop your ears so that you can listen for those kinds of things. Now, to go a little bit further, if you really want to start, again, practicing your pronunciation by yourself, try listening to basic English for really, really young kids. This could be YouTube videos, or it could be even just like the regular sounds. Like I have a phonics video series that actually goes through all of the basic sounds in English. It's called The Sounds of English. It's one of actually like my most popular video series on YouTube. I don't know why that is. People really just like phonics. But if you listen to that, or if you listen to something a bit more advanced, like maybe some Sesame Street, which is another TV program for children, but anything for kids that uses pretty short words or short phrases where you can just listen to a sound and they'll often repeat a word over and over again, like ball, ball, ball. They're trying to teach individual words to kids like that, just regular vocabulary training, but for native speakers. So if you listen to these things with the headphones on and then actually try to speak at the same time, this isn't like waiting until after the word is said. You're actually saying it at the exact same time. So you're listening with the headphones, and maybe you have to hear it a few times to get the timing right, but you're really trying to say that at the same time. So if we were to practice that right now, I could say ah, 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 ah. And you can go back and listen to this and try to make the same sound with me. Ah, 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 ah. Now, there are lots of ways that you can practice this, again, depending on what your level is. You can start with really basic things like individual sounds that you can get from phonics, or individual words, or, starting to get into phrases and then longer things. And then, the highest level where you would do that would be listening to something like a movie or a TV program for adults. And then when you're able to do that, then basically you have the same pronunciation as a native speaker because you're able to copy that sound perfectly. Just remember that maybe, let's say you're a woman and you can't really go really, really low like a man's deep voice, or, vice versa. The opposite is true if you're a man and you're trying to copy a woman's voice. You don't have to match the pitch, but again, you can try to harmonize like that at a like an octave lower. And so this is a musical term for the eighth note down, or like the next note in the series at a higher level. So the first octave would be like ooh, and then maybe like if you go up 8 notes, like ooh, 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 ooh. And again, I really apologize for my voice right now. I'm really not singing very well. And I'm not even I used to sing in a choir when I was younger, but I'm really bad at reading music, even though I know a few of the terms for music. But anyway, I know enough to be able to mimic sounds. So if you keep that in mind, and while you're listening to things, you really begin to, number one, remember that you don't need a native speaker to practice and improve your pronunciation. You just need to train yourself to start copying sounds. But if trying to pronounce a whole sentence is too difficult for you, you really need to take a step back and go back and start reviewing the things that are easier, like individual sounds or individual words. So remember that, remember that, remember that. And then the other thing is that you just need to practice. It's a skill that you can develop, but over time it becomes easy, and then you enjoy doing it, and then it really starts to become second nature. So second nature is a really great phrase, and just a really great term. It just means something you do automatically or naturally. So swimming is second nature to a fish, or climbing trees is second nature to a monkey. It's just something they do naturally and without thinking about it. So that's really what I'm trying to do here. For these podcast episodes and for the Power Learning newsletters and for the Master English Conversation lessons, I try to focus on individual skills and then develop each of those into a habit so that it becomes, again, easy, and then it's something you want to do, and then you continue to do it over time, and then you become really, really good at it, and it becomes second nature. So when English becomes second nature to you, you become fluent. And I hope this has been a fantastic podcast episode for you. Go out, really try to practice and improve your pronunciation. Get your headphones on. You can listen to this, or you can find some other videos on YouTube or other songs or anything. Just look for children's songs or children's TV shows or something like that, or of like vocabulary training, anything, but just make sure you're listening to things that are appropriate for your level. And then as you start getting better, you can level yourself up. Well, again, this is the end of this podcast episode. If you've got any questions about that, feel free to leave them down below if you're watching this on YouTube. Or if you've downloaded this, you can come visit me at EnglishAnyone.com or send me an email at info@EnglishAnyone.com. And if you'd like to learn more about pronunciation, I teach a lot more specific techniques like this and actually go over individual phrases and all kinds of things like that in Master English Conversation. So if you really want to become a great speaker, and not only that, but learn how to express yourself naturally and clearly and in a way that's when you're trying to speak with someone and you kind of want to express something, but you don't know exactly how to say it, that's the kind of thing that I teach in Master English Conversation. So how to express yourself well in particular situations and how to do so confidently. Well, that's the end of this episode, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Have a fantastic day, and get out and start doing this. Start improving your pronunciation. Bye-bye.